Hello, this is Edith Newmeyer, and I am the author of the book The Mystery of Adam. And right now, I am not really talking about my book that I have already published, but I am going into a new topic. Well, not totally new, but I'm going to be talking about my new book called The Mystery of the Second Adam or The Last Adam. I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to use, what kind of title. But again, it has to do with the second Adam, which is the Christ or Moshiach or Messiah. And so today I'm going to continue. I want to look today at things that the Jews say about Messiah. Now, Messiah is a very important topic or important person in Judaism. And even though, of course, with probably most of the Jews, it is not, but as in Judaism as a whole, it is. And so I kind of want to look a little bit at, before I go into a little deeper into what Mashiach is from a Christian standpoint. I want to look at Mashiach from a Jewish standpoint. And I got some information from the website called Moshiach.com. So somebody's writing, a Rabbi Ginsburg is writing on the topic, and he says the extent to which Mashiach in the Messianic era, he will usher in our essential elements of Jewish belief and is largely unappreciated or even unknown. And even amongst those who are aware of the centrality of this concept in Judaism, it is widely assumed that the advent of Mashiach is not something we need to be concerned with or actively seek to hasten. Okay, so he says it here very clearly that it's not for the regular Jews, for the average Jew, that's not an important topic. But for Judaism as a whole, that's a very, very important topic, and especially for this writer. He continues to say, belief in Mashiach is the expression of our radical non-acceptance of reality as it is. So in other words, he's saying the reality that exists right now, we cannot accept. And as a result of this not acceptance of the reality we have right now, we have to think about Mashiach, because of course Mashiach will change everything. The bold refusal to be satisfied with the present order, he says. Okay, so if we're not acknowledging this reality and we're not satisfied with the present order, Mashiach is the answer. Thus, the coming of Mashiach is the fulfillment of the Torah's promise that this world can, should, and indeed will ultimately become a dwelling place for God. Isn't that interesting? Now, if we continue to learn about the Jewish Mashiach, we can see that sometimes is not necessarily considered. Okay, you will see later. So, but they want a dwelling place for God. Okay, how is that dwelling place for God reached? Well, I'm not going there. I'm going to go there later. The Messianic era is the answer to all problems. For all problems are born of the fallen consciousness that will be healed when Mashiach comes. So Mashiach has to be a superhuman in a sense, because we are not capable of healing what is going on in our world. So they're expecting, Judaism is expecting, a Moshiach that will radically heal this world. To the caring person, then, the arrival of Mashiach and the beginning of the Messianic era is crucial. It is not an abstract aspiration towards which we aim in our struggles with life. It is a necessity, in an ontological imperative. The fact that Mashiach has not yet come is cause of gravest concern. The puzzle behind the delay in his arrival must be solved. All other anxieties can be reduced to this one ultimate anxiety. Okay, so it is very important. The Jews are waiting very strongly for this Mashiach. Now, there's one problem, and they still do not accept, of course, Jesus, because the Jews will not look, or I shouldn't say they will not look, but in the forefront, as you can hear what he's saying here, they're waiting for this Mashiach who will change everything, is a Mashiach who is the descendant of David and, of course, the descendant of Judah, and who will be a ruler, who will be a defender of Israel, who will rescue Israel and destroy their enemies. The same Mashiach they were looking for during Jesus' time, and why they couldn't accept Jesus. So, the Jews only look at sections in the Old Testament who refer to this conquering Mashiach. Okay, they don't. Well, I shouldn't say they don't want to have anything, but there's also in. It's not that they're not looking at the other ones, but I think they don't want to combine them. They are aware of these passages in the Old Testament where Mashiach is actually a suffering servant. Okay. However, they say because of that, they say, well, there's two Mashiachs. Okay, there is one, the Mashiach ben David, who will come as this king, and then there is one called Mashiach ben Joseph, who is going to be the suffering servant. So they pull the two apart in order to satisfy these various passages. One passage that talks about the suffering Mashiach, and one that talks about the conquering Mashiach. They cannot put the two together. Okay? So, and they also say, of course, Jesus Christ was not the Mashiach because he didn't fulfill the qualities that they are expecting from this Mashiach. Okay? Interestingly, I don't know where the idea is coming from that it is Mashiach ben Joseph, because that should kind of raise some eyebrows, because Jesus was the son of Joseph, because Ben means son. Okay, so Mashiach ben David, the son of David, and ben Joseph, the son of Joseph. So they should kind of raise their eyebrows, but they didn't even think about that. They didn't even accept Jesus as the Moshiach ben Joseph, the suffering. And mainly because the Jews have always been very, very, very focused on this conquering Mashiach, somebody who is a great warrior, who is they believe that he's going to be king. Matter of fact, that is very clear that this Mashiach, this Ben David, is supposed to be a combination of king and priest. Okay, that is clear in the Old Testament, and they do believe that. They also believe, which is very interesting, that this Mashiach that they want to come will reinstate the sacrifices, but only the what they call what I think. See, I forgot it now. The I should have this up and running because they're two different kinds of sacrifice. One sacrifice is, of course, for the atonement of sin, and that sacrifice will be gone. Okay, they know that. And why is that? Well, we know that because Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice, there is no more sacrifice for the atonement of sin necessary. So the sacrifices that are being given are more sacrifices of worship. Um, and yeah, you can say that sacrifices of worship. And the Jews call it a little bit different. Um, so anyway, so they do believe that this Messiah comes and that Messiah will also bring back the Jews from all over the world. And that Messiah will also build the temple. So I also found that in the Jewish literature. Now you can do the same thing. You can go in on the internet very easily. There is also one. Let me see. I'm going to bring it up and um, that I have used in my book, and that is there it is, Judaism 101. They also have an excellent section on Messiah. Moshiach, it says the messianic idea in Judaism. Okay, Moshiach the Messiah. Um, so that is an interesting one to read as well. And okay, um, remember though, when you read it, this is the Jewish take on it. The Jews always were interested in a king. Okay, remember they wanted a king in the promised land when they told God, we want a king like all the other nations around us. And God says, no, you're going to have to wait for the real king, which is Messiah. And they didn't believe it, and they wanted to have the king, and so they pushed. And that, of course, went really bad because most of the kings did not worship God and led the Israelites astray. But this idea is still in the Jewish head. They want a Jewish state. They believe that Jacob was promised this land, and so they believe that they should have this land. And again, remember what they did with the king. They pushed, and finally God said, okay, just have your king and see what's going to happen. And I think the same thing is happening with the state of Israel. They were pushing kind of God for the same thing. They were not pushing, but they took things in their own hand this time. And just wheeled and dealed so until they had their own state. Because see, God dispersed them throughout the world in order to punish them in a sense. Okay, you can read that in the Old Testament. And I don't have anything in front of me right now, but I may look it up. He sent them out in this world because they rejected Messiah. Okay, the same thing. He sent them in captivity, the Babylonian captivity and the other captivities, because they were worshiping other gods. And the same thing after they rejected Jesus, he did the same thing again. For what? For punishment. Okay? Now, this is not my saying. All right? I didn't bring that up. It's not my teaching. It is the teaching of the Bible. And when you read the prophets, that's exactly what they're saying. Okay, that God sent them away because he was punishing them in a sense. And not punishing in a sense what we're thinking about, but punishing in a sense that he wants them to experience painful things so they can finally get to the point where they say, God, help us. okay, where they're not anymore depending on their own self, because that's exactly what we are all doing, not just the Jews, not just the Hebrews. We are all doing that. We are all want to do our own thing. That's the result of the sin, that we always want to do our own thing. And the Jewish people, the Hebrews, are not any different. The Israelites, whatever you want to call them, they're not any different. Okay, God didn't choose them because they were better. God chose them for other reasons. Okay, yes, uh, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they were trusting God. I don't know so much. Well, Isaac too, or else he wouldn't, follow his dad. But especially Jacob, they were trusting God. They were struggling. Jacob was struggling. He was not just, oh yeah, I'm gonna, follow God. He was struggling at first, and so Moses, all these leaders, they were just human beings, and so they were not perfect, and neither are they perfect today. They're always saying, well, we are the promised people. Well, we are all, because again, the same section that I read just the other day about the Jews being dispersed throughout the world also says, that God is also reaching the whole world. Okay? And that's something the Jews forgot too. The Jews forgot that they were actually supposed to be a light to the Gentiles. And they forgot that. Why? Because they were so focused on themselves. They're still focused on themselves, which shows very clearly their idea about Mashiach. Again, this is all about their land, it's about their king, and it's about their special position. They're not thinking about what is God's intention with all this stuff. Okay? Well, and that's why they are kind of blind. Even though, I mean, what this guy said, it was just really amazing that, in Judaism, that this Messiah is a very strong, important thing. And especially today, there's a lot of groups today who want to even, again, hasten the day for Mashiach's return. I mean, they are almost working at it. And again, okay, they want to wheel and deal and put things in place so he would come faster. And you can't do that. You cannot do it. He's going to come when he's going to come. He is going to come when he is ready. And so I think it's important that we do remember that the dilemma of that there is a Mashiach who suffers as well as rules, and the Jews just solve by having two Mashiachs. So the Mashiach Joseph will come supposedly before Mashiach ben David. Okay, and this first Mashiach is going to be killed, and then this other Mashiach will come and change things. So the interesting thing is, though, that they have a hard time seeing the redemptive part of Mashiach. Okay, they don't seem to see that, even though I know I will bring up some sections where we clearly see that redemption is something very important of this Mashiach. Mashiach's purpose was to suffer and die for our sins. They had the example of the lamb, okay, the Passover lamb. The Passover lamb who was perfect, was supposed to be perfect and die for the sins of the people. And lots of people got that, okay, throughout the Old Testament. They did get it, that, God requires a sacrifice that is perfect. Okay, but somehow they don't make that connection between Mashiach being that lamb. Um, if you do, I mean, we know that John, who was a Jew, um, he acknowledged that, and all the believers, the believers, in Jesus, they acknowledged that. They knew that he was the lamb. Okay, it made sense to them. But to the whole of Judaism, it just doesn't make sense. And so we will talk about that some next time, about what the difference is between the Jewish belief in Mashiach and the things that Christians see about Mashiach that was um, hidden, and that's what it is. It was hidden from the um, general Jewish population. Why did God do that? Because they have rejected him. They have rejected him so many times. Um, I mean, he brought them back. He divorced them because they worshipped idols. He brings them back from the Babylonian captivity, um, and yet they're still not repenting really. They continue with their old stuff. They're Pharisees and Sadducees. They continued with their own little interpretation. We saw that conflict when Jesus came, that he really came down hard on the Pharisees. And, because they were misleading the people by all their instructions and all their rules. And so we can see clearly that they, again, during Jesus' time, they were going astray. They tried to kill Jesus because they didn't believe that Jesus was their Mashiach, because they had a different understanding. Okay, they wanted a different Mashiach. Okay, they wanted to have a king who was kicking out the Romans, and Jesus didn't do that. And another big thing about the Jews, they did not believe that Mashiach is actually God becoming flesh. When Jesus said, well, I am who I am, when he said, I am the beginning and I'm the end, the Alpha and Omega, when he said, many things about referring to that he was God, they wanted to kill him. Okay, that was just totally, they call it blasphemy. That for them, that was blasphemy. And no human being can make himself or herself a god. Impossible. So that's when finally they rejected him. So it's very important that we look at all these things. So I'm going to finish up for today. And this is our kind of first look at what the Jews think about Messiah, or Mashiach, as they call him. So from the beginning, God promised, of course, this Mashiach, and the Jews knew it. But again, it was covered up because they had no interest. And this writer says it clearly, they still don't have any interest even today. Okay, most Jews, they don't care about the Mashiach. They don't care. They want to make their own little, world, their own little state, their own little whatever. So, well, I will finish, and next time I will pick up on where I left off. You can do your own study, do some research on the internet, and type in Moshiach, okay, Moshiach, and look at Jewish sites that tells you about what the Jews are expecting, how the Jews view Mashiach. Okay, and then we can next time talk about the extended version. Okay, all right. Well, again, keep studying, and I will talk to you next time.